It's 2 o'clock, but we're still um, our commissioners, so we're going to give some people some additional time to get logged in and join us.
Commissioner Breitling is again joining me in my office, so you're not going to see an icon pop up for Commissioner Breitling, but he is here.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful, Robert. So we are still waiting on Commissioner Pollock and Commissioner.
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
According to my attendance list.
Ken is in the office here. I'm going to go see if he's just having some challenges logging in or if he's just getting logged in. I'll be right back.
Thank you.
This meeting is no longer being recorded or transcribed.
Mr. Hagan, make sure he's on. Brian, can you hear me?
Can you say that one more time, Mr. Peterson?
If you can hear me or not. Mr. Hagan just called me, having some struggles getting online, and I'm wondering if he is in, just needs to be accessed, or he's in the lobby. I don't know if Ms.
Okay.
McIntyre, you can check that, or Pearl.
I can see the lobby, and I don't have anyone that is currently waiting.
Okay, I'm going to text you. I'm still on, but if you lose me, that's why I'm talking to Hagan, so
Okay.
bear with me for 1 second.
Commissioner Pollock is working with Terry Schmaltz and said he is either on or will be on momentarily.
Wonderful.
Does anybody know if there's a trick as to what internet you should grab? Because I'm sitting here in my office with my laptop, and I finally got it to work, and I don't know why I got it to work. But I couldn't get it to work for the last meeting. And I noticed that the internet gives you several different choices. You can be a Cass County government, a Cass County government staff, or Cass County government guest.
I understand it's supposed to be staff.
You should be on staff because that's a quicker internet connection. That's a better that's a better connection.
But you know what's interesting, Mary, you say that because when I'm in the office here, it's the only time I show up as guest on these meetings. When I log in from outside the office, I just log in as, Cass County, normal. But I have no idea what it is. But.
Yeah, it was much more difficult for me to log in. I mean, I've been doing it seamlessly at home, but I came in here and it was just like I had to do it 12 times of it before I finally.
Exactly. So I just give up and I come in as guest.
That's strange.
Well, I couldn't even come in as guest, but Dwayne taught me how to use telephone on the desk, so I hadn't used that in 8 years.
Miss Ferguson?
Yes.
Or Miss McIntyre, can you re-forward the invite to Mr. Hagan, please, so he can call in? He's had some struggles. He says he's on, but I don't know if I can't see the whole index. I'm looking here. Guests are in the lobby waiting to join. I bet that's him, the 238.
Somebody's on with a mic.
Mr. Hagan, was that you?
Ken Pollock just joined.
Okay, I went ahead and resent that to both of the email addresses that I have for Mr. Hagan.
Thank you. I'll text him right now.
just think about how much we're going to appreciate it when we can sit in a room together and talk and meet and see each other, and we can just never take that for granted again.
Robert cutting out in the middle of the sentence. Shoot.
He was being highfalutin. Don't worry, you missed nothing.
Okay. All right. Well, I do believe we have enough individuals meeting to go ahead and get started
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
and allow those others to join us when they're able to call in. So, to begin, I would like to call this September 8th meeting of the Cass County Human Services Zone Board to order at 2:05 p.m. Ms. Secretary, will you please take roll?
Mr. Breitling? Mr. Ellingsburg? Mr. Hagan? Mr. Pollock? Mr. Peterson?
Well, I'm here. I don't know about anybody else. See how it goes.
Ms. Sherling?
I am here as well.
Please call for Mr. Breitling again. My phone was on mute. My apologies.
Mr. Breitling?
Here.
Mr. Steen?
Here.
Ms. Ferguson?
Here. Then also joining us today is Robert Wilson, Cass County Administrator. So we're going to move through our agenda to the approval of minutes. So there's a board minutes from our August 3rd meeting. Do I have a motion regarding these past minutes?
So moved.
Motion to approve or second.
All those approved say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, it looks like we just had someone join us. Was someone able to join by phone?
I think that was Commissioner Pollock.
Okay,
Yes, I'm back with you. Thank you.
great. Thanks. Marla, would you please note that on our attendance roster, please?
Yes.
Okay, so now to move into the meat and potatoes of our agenda today. I provided a document, and I see that I labeled it one thing on the agenda, and I labeled it another thing on my document. But it's really around development initiatives. And so what I wanted to kind of talk about today is we're getting to me having been here for 6 months, and while I've dealt with a lot of coronavirus things in the past 6 months, I've also had the opportunity to be able to, investigate and assess what's happening organizationally, which I think is one of the reasons that I'm here. And so I've been putting together this development plan or these development initiatives with the help of other managers and really just trying to flesh out what needs to be done on an agency level to get us to a point of operating really efficiently and effectively. So just as note, my development initiatives document is a work in progress, and it's currently a representation of a culmination of my 6 months of evaluation of things that have been happening in the agency. And we know that's about as good as one can assess an agency in the middle of a pandemic. So I believe that there are still, a lot of opportunities for improvement here. The purpose of this plan, too, is to outline the development initiatives that need to be addressed to improve the agency overall. And they are addressing things operationally and administratively. So how are we doing the work that we do every day? Do we have policies and procedures that guide best practice that allow staff to do things very consistently on a regular basis, day to day, without variation? Are we addressing the cultural things that need to be addressed within our agency? Are we taking care of workforce well-being? Are we living our mission and our values, and are they demonstrated in the daily work that we do with citizens and with our community? And are we addressing the needs that our staff have, so are we maximizing our human resources and the potential of our staff by addressing things like their workforce well-being, but also how we reward and recognize people, how we train and develop them for future positions, and how we keep them engaged in the environment that they're in so that they do really good work while they're here. So right now I have 17 initiatives listed on my list, and they need to be fully fleshed out. So some of them are further along in the process with action items and how we're going to do things and what documents or processes or policies need to be built to support that initiative. And so really the steps going forward are that these initiatives and any future initiatives that are important for the health of our organization are addressed, they're fully fleshed out, they're prioritized, because obviously with 17, we can't do 17 projects simultaneously or I will spontaneously combust. And then we need to present these things to the staff, recruit appropriate staff members to be on these work groups, and then design, implement, and monitor the processes that we put in place. And because this is in its initial stages, this work is going to continue to progress over the coming months and probably even years as you look at the continuous quality improvement cycle of developing new processes and practices and having things like annual policy reviews in place to make sure that we've kept up with redesign, how redesign has changed our policies and practices, or how federal rules and regulations change and impact our processes and procedures, or maybe how the merit, if there's any changes in the merit system on how we might hire or administer progressive discipline to our staff. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but I just felt like it was important to share this preliminary. And I think on it too have been some places where I've addressed things that have come up in this meeting, like our extended business hours. How do we address having extended business hours, and things also that are pertinent to the pandemic? How do we telecommute on a long-term basis rather than just on an emergency basis? So as this work goes forward, I know that I'll be able to do a lot of collaborative things with the county itself. We want to have uniform policies and processes and practices since we are still Cass County employees. And then in the places where it's appropriate for me to collaborate with the state on processes and practices, I'll do that as well. So that was, that's kind of my spiel about that. So I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions or comments regarding this development plan.
Pearl, this is Rick.
Go ahead.
We had a chance to go over this, you and I, and it looks obviously a lot of good stuff. You put a lot of planning into this and thought into it, and my comment is
Could you say that again, please, Rick?
yeah, I think there's some feedback in there somewhere, but
Yeah, I think it's been addressed.
okay. I know my point was, you and I had a chance to review this, and obviously a lot of thought put into this, a lot of good plans, going forward. And I've said a couple of times here. So my question is, there's, how much of this do you think you'll actually be able to get accomplished, and what's your time frame?
Yeah, I think that the most I think the best way to approach this is that it's obviously going to have to be done in sections. So there are some things that I see as important to address and to start those processes soon. So addressing the mission, vision, and values of the organization would probably be my number one, or of the agency would be my number one priority. That being because that mission and vision and values should permeate everything that happens along this way. So within the selection process, we want to hire people that are in alignment with our mission, that their why parallels our why. And we want to hire people who already demonstrate our values in their past work. And so that would go through that process. So for me, that's really the place where I'd like to start. And I have implemented in a previous organization and led a team to revise mission and to address values. And then really after that, I think it's about addressing, we have some policies and procedures that need to be addressed. For uniformity, I think that we need to address our telecommuting processes for some uniformity, just knowing that that COVID is not going away, and then our performance management cycle is really that it's not really a cycle right now of meeting with people routinely, providing their evaluations, helping them set goals for the next performance period. And that it's being done on a number of different forms. So to me, that's kind of some of our low-hanging fruit. And in terms of timeframes, really, my next step after getting these fleshed out was to really use like processes and project management to start setting out timelines. So some things could be run simultaneously, whereas certain processes like the revisiting of the mission and the values would need to happen independently and first, because it sets this foundation. So when I say months, I mean Rick. I see that Mary.
That's what I was kind of thinking, Pearl. So my point, don't be frustrated if you can't get everything done. I mean, because you got a lot of stuff going on here. So, and hopefully the board understands that as well. So. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Mary, I see that you had used the raise your hand feature. What can I answer for you?
Well, I like this a lot. It really ties into what Robert and I worked on last year with our strategic plan, and we've done a lot of work since then, countywide, on implementing many of those things that we identified. But getting back to your mission, vision, and values, I would think maybe one of the top things that could kind of cue into that would be, the makeup of the Social Services Zone Board. And I know we talked about at some point the state's going to have some sort of training, but we're kind of, I feel like, in a holding pattern, right now, waiting to decide what we need to fulfill that mission. So anyway, I just think that the board would be a really important thing to focus on as well.
Yeah, I'll just go a little off into my some of my bullet points for my operational report, but the state has hired a director of zone operations, and that will be Kristen Hasbargen. And if you recognize her name, that's because she's worked, she is the zone director in RSR, which is just south of us, and she's worked in the Wahpeton area, I believe, for approximately 25 years in human services. And so one of her primary objectives that she's been tasked with is to do this zone board education. And so I had an opportunity to speak with Kristen last week. And we have an upcoming zone director meeting, which is on Wednesday. And once a month we schedule about an afternoon and we work on projects and things together. And so I just asked her if that would be an appropriate time for us collaboratively as zone directors to support her in the beginning stages of this zone board education. And so that is a project that we're going to collectively work on together. Kristen is not supposed to assume her post until October 1st, but she thinks that with some additional support, that will really help her roll out that zone board education piece much sooner, in her first month or two versus waiting, any longer than is necessary. And again, the concerns expressed by this board are very much parallel concerns expressed by other boards who are eagerly waiting that information as well. So there have finally been some really concrete steps forward in getting that person assigned and starting to get that work done so boards can be educated. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns, ideas related to the development initiatives that have been presented?
Pearl, this is Robert. I would just jump in and just offer up that I was able to be part of that conversation with you and Commissioner Steen, and I know you covered a lot of ground there, and you have you're going in a lot of different directions at the same time. One of the things that I know I mentioned to you on that call that I think you may have in the works for future meetings is a follow-up on kind of a staff survey or a survey to see kind of where things have moved in the since you've been on board. And I again, not throwing more on your plate, but that I know that was a conversation that we had and something that I had heard as important to a number of board members, and so I appreciated being able to share that comment with you as well.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to that a little bit. I think it's important to survey individuals. I think the most appropriate way, though, to survey individuals and really do something that's meaningful would be to implement an employee engagement and satisfaction survey where engagement is the primary focus. And there's a lot of literature, scientific literature in industrial and organizational psychology that actually states that if you really want to make meaningful changes in your organization, you survey your employees' levels of engagement, and then the process that is needed to follow up on that really is that one, you should be using an evidence-based survey tool. So you shouldn't just ask questions like, do you like your job and want to stay here forever? They really have to have some substantiating a research behind them. Gallup does research on things like this. And so I think that's important rather than maybe taking a survey monkey of my own making, is that one, my survey wouldn't be evidence-based. Two, I think now is a really interesting time to talk about actually surveying employees. If we were to use a previous survey, what really has changed in the last 6 months was the data from the previous survey actually analyzed, reviewed, were there corrective action plans put in place to address all of the concerns? Were those concerns and how they were going to be addressed really vocalized to employees? And I think the reality of that question is that hasn't happened because I started March 16th and we had a pandemic. And so I do have some concerns about, doing it like an apples to apples. We're surveyed in December about these issues, and now we're going to survey you now 9 or 10 months down the road. And we've had a major crisis, and we've had changes at work, and we've had leadership changes. But really, a lot of like the meat and potatoes in this development plan haven't haven't been implemented, and I think that's where we'll start to see real change. And I think that if we were able to, maybe even as a county, talking bigger picture, secure the rights to use an employee engagement survey that was evidence-based across our entire Cass County government, and we were a subsection of that as a division, I think that we would see a lot of these things that are on the development plan also show. We want to see that our leaders care about us. We want to see that when I do good work, I'm going to be rewarded, and some things like that. So that would be my stance and what I would push for, and why I identified the need for engagement and satisfaction surveys to be provided in future. Commissioner Peterson, you had your hand up.
Hey there, thanks. And thank you for addressing what was going to be my question regarding why don't we just do the one we just did survey? And I think there's some logic to what you're saying. I guess what I just want to put on the table and make sure that everyone's aware, not everyone's aware, but be on the record, maybe is a better way to say it, that we need to figure out if things have improved and how you mechanize that or how you resolve that. I guess I'll leave to you because you're the expert, but that's what I was going to say was, why don't we just do the same survey over? Well, what you're telling me, that's probably not the best way to do it. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Yes?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, there's a number of issues that go into play there. First, could I really legally redo someone else's proprietary survey? That would be a question. And then two,
I know a guy. We'll figure that out.
Okay, I'm sure you do. I think then secondarily is if the contents of that survey hasn't been formally addressed, there is more scientific research that says at some point you can survey people till you're blue in the face, but if they don't see any results happen from those surveys, they'll just even stop doing your surveys in the future. So I think there's a lot of really good work that can be done around that. A lot of that I think is contained in these plans, and then looking to the future, if we really want to know how we're going to improve our environment, if we want to increase engagement, which we do because engagement has positive results like increased organizational citizenship behavior, which is going above and beyond in the workplace, and increased retention and decreases, missed days of work and all things like that. I think that's really the point that we want to take, or the position that we really want to take. But I think that things will be appropriately addressed that are on that survey, but just when we survey people and how we survey people needs to be appropriate to then capture information that says, okay, we took care of some things, and how do we get better next time? And then how do we get better next time, and so on and so forth. So we're continuously improving.
Wonderful. Just as long as we're making progress, and obviously I know we're all going through still the plague. I get it.
Right.
But a lot of the times when it's your life, you don't necessarily care about the plague. You just want situations resolved. So the sooner we move, or at least put in place publicly what our action steps are, that may resolve any concerns as well too, so that the folks know that we haven't forgotten about them. We're not symbolically moving on, that we checked our box and walked away from our staff. I just want to make sure my friends over there and our friends over there are taken care of. So anything we can do to expedite would be greatly appreciated. Again, even if it's just starting to put some dates on a calendar. I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
I think too, the reality of that survey is that there are some items that need to be addressed on those survey results that are outside of the scope of my ability to change. And so I think maybe that warrants further conversation with myself and Mr. Wilson around how some of maybe the county related things that were identified on that survey get addressed, that I'm not going to have the power or authority. But I can certainly support, in doing, but at the end of the day, it's going to be better addressed by someone else. So I think there's that opportunity as well. Mr. Hagan, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I finally made it on. I had to reboot my app, so sorry about that.
Oh,
so, you made a comment in our organization. We survey all of the different departments, whether they're operational or whatever they are, but it allows you to really get a handle on some of the points that are working well within your group and some of them that are more challenging. And then you have a broad spectrum of other county employees to compare it against. We do that a lot. It has sure helped out. And the second one is maybe get a team of cultural changes or whatever you want to call it. That would be some of the different department heads across Cass County to help look at this and as a global basis. But just kind of throwing that out, but it has helped our numbers go up, and then you can see here's some areas of challenges, here's some areas that are working well, and to get a team together to help you, pull it together and help you structure a plan to change it. But it's just a thought, but I like your idea of getting a really good survey system that crosses all the way across all of the different areas of Cass County. So, just my thoughts.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, and that definitely, those things that exist on a county level that are, established, that are also identified in this development plan are things where I'm not necessarily going to recreate the wheel, but know that I need to partner, with human resources and with Mr. Wilson as the administrator, and with potentially other department heads who are facing similar issues with their departments as well. So I really look forward to the collaborative opportunities that this will present. So.
And this is Robert. From my perspective, happy to collaborate on that. And obviously, one of the things that Pearl's strengths is your background of organizational dynamics, organizational leadership. So you really bring some expertise to that I think we can benefit from countywide. And so I think those are great collaborations that we will continue moving towards. And when you have maybe a few less things on your plate, like in the middle of a plague too.
Talking in 18 months, right? Just kidding. All right, before we move on to their operations report, is there any other questions or comments that I can try to answer for anyone? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on to our operations report. Per usual, we sent out our statistical report and then a narrative. So before I go into my particular section, and I have a couple of updates that weren't included in mine because they happened on Friday after this was already done. Is there anything from the statistical report or the narrative that anybody has any questions on? Just as a note, I did follow up with Ms. Dorf. We had missed the number of foster care licenses that we had done in July, and so that number is 89. So if you happen to notice that little number missing on your spreadsheet, we went ahead and followed up on that. And you'd think that we would see things as many times as we looked at that, but I didn't catch it until just this afternoon when I was preparing. So.
On your narrative, Pearl,
Yeah.
on your operations report narrative,
Yes.
it was pages it here, second or third page, but it talks about the overflow shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And I read with some interest about the piece where it says the youth were discharged with no plan or option for them to be placed elsewhere. And what do they put them on the street, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, so there are various levels of care that children can be placed in. So, for example, your PRTFs and your QRTPs, all those fun acronyms, are higher levels of care. So, for example, a PRTF is a psychiatric residential treatment facility. And those are appropriate for youth when they might have a need for some intense behavioral counseling, or they, just like any other person, are on new medications to help them with psychiatric issues, and they need a place to stabilize. And so those types of facilities are then used to help children, go through a transitional period, but it's inappropriate to leave a child at that level of care for a long period of time. It's very restrictive. Things are different. We want to support children being in the lowest level of care that they can be in, because that lets them have the most normal life that they can have. So what we've been experiencing, and zones all across the state of North Dakota, is that because these PRTFs and QRTPs are limited and have limited beds and limited licenses for their number of beds, that the supply exceeds the demand exceeds the supply. And so when a child's order is up, or when the facility determines that it's appropriate to discharge, and sometimes they say, we can't help this kid anymore, so they're done, come get them in 2 weeks. And sometimes they discharge because they've excelled and they've finished their allotted time there, and they're really ready to come back and find an appropriate foster care placement. The struggle is then, and it's somewhat exacerbated by the pandemic, is that you have a child, say, that's been in a PRTF, so a psychiatric facility, and they have behaviors, and they have histories of trauma and abuse of a variety of different natures, and they're on medications and things like that. And so you have, at times, foster families or other residential facilities, that's like a group home, that just, they either don't have room, or they don't want to take on maybe a complex child with really high needs. And so what happens when you say there's no plan, it's not from a lack of effort to plan. It's just that you can put in an application for a child in 15 places, and every single place can tell you, sorry, we're not open, we don't have the bed, not age appropriate, not behaviorally appropriate. And you can't compel a foster family to take a child that they don't feel equipped to manage in their own home. And so we end up in these situations where, when the PRTF says they can't take them, and another facility that's residential doesn't have room for them, and foster families aren't interested in doing that, that at the end of the day, they are under the custody of Cass County, and we are the only people who can't say no in that situation. So we are, in that way, really lucky to have a shelter that we can staff for our youth, but it's really complicated. Really, the reality is that the blessing of the shelter is only that youth don't then end up spending the night in the annex, with staff with them on some kind of cot. So it's not an ideal situation. It's being talked about heavily. It's on the zone director level. We've involved the state in many discussions around hard to place youth. We've been trying to partner with community partners who provide other creative solutions to ensure that youth have safe, secure, consistent options for them. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So
really
I bottom line is, it's not the state's responsibility, it's the county's at the end of the day.
You know what? At the end of the day, if you ask me, in my humble opinion, formed in 6 months, that if we have a child under the legal custody of the county, that is everybody's responsibility. That's my responsibility as the legal custodian. It's the state's responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. But where the buck stops is with us, because we're not going to not go pick up a child. That's inappropriate. You know, we're not going to provide a safe place for them. And so when children do go into our shelter, then we continue our very diligent and assertive efforts in finding a place for them that does not have to be our youth shelter. You know, because that is just one more place that's not a home for them. So it should be very temporary. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, you know, we've been in a position where we've staffed that shelter. And we staff that shelter, when I say that, that's Human Service Zone staff giving of their time, sometimes their evenings and their weekends and overnight, and they stay and they staff that shelter. And so when we did it the first time for COVID-related reasons, because we had could not find a placement for this child, and it was like a month after the pandemic started, you know, we had the option for some COVID-related overtime. But now that that's really not the apparent issue for placement, we can't do that. So, you know, we have salaried staff who, you know, are staying up an extra 8 hours at night to do things. And it's a challenge. It's a morale issue. It's a human resource issue. You know, and it just is not in alignment with like strengthening and preserving families by having a kid stay in a shelter when they should really be with a family in a home. So I will get off my high horse.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Hagan, I think you have your hand up.
Just a quick question here. What are our options today for children from a shelter perspective? Does New Life Center, or do some of them provide that type of a option, or there's other shelters around? What are our options today?
You know what? Right now we are using a youth work shelter, and they've allowed us to use that space. But we haven't used any other shelters, primarily because of the pandemic, and also because the youth that we would send there would be minors, so they wouldn't be accompanied by an adult, so it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for them to be in a shelter environment by themselves. So in this case, we have staff with them 24/7. You know, we still ensure that if they have school or they need to get to school, we're doing that. We're coordinating all of their medical appointments and getting them to where they need to be. We continue to work on their case management and meet all of their needs in that environment.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Mr. Wilson, you had your hand up?
Pearl, to be blunt right here, I'm going to ask you to toot your own horn a little bit. And there was an issue or an instance a couple of weeks ago that you told myself and Commissioner Steen about last week, where for a variety of reasons there was a placement that wasn't fully anticipated as it should have, and you and another member of the senior staff really stepped out of a role that a director typically would serve in. I think that, and I think this speaks volumes for the way you are leading this office, and I think you know what I'm talking about. I would appreciate it if you'd share the story.
Yeah, so me and Linda Dorff had a sleepover early in August at the shelter, and we stayed up that night, and I stayed the next night to provide care for this kid, and we just really didn't have any staff signed up at that moment. We felt like that was appropriate for us to do that, you know, but I can't really honestly toot my own horn without, you know, expressing extreme gratitude to all of the other staff who have given up many more hours and many more days and nights than I, you know, ever have or ever will, to be there and be present for those youth, and to, you know, make sure that they're getting outside and that they're being engaged in daily activities and that their needs are being met, you know, and cooking them meals and making sure that they feel safe and secure. And so it's been, you know, really 2 nights from me, and the rest of the staff have stepped up so much and so graciously. And it's been really a wonderful demonstration of how, again, when a child comes into our care, it is everybody's responsibility to step up, not just that case manager, not just that case manager supervisor, not just Linda because that's her division, or me because, you know, I'm the director. And so we've had so many staff step into different roles and do things, you know, transporters stay at the shelter and case workers transport their own kids to where they need to go, and everybody's been flexible and creative and supportive. And so it's been a really, it's a position that I wish that we hadn't been in, but people have really rose to the occasion and supported these kids. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about the team, and the things that they've done for these kids that we take care of. Really proud of them. So.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions from the operations narrative or the statistics? I'll talk a little bit more about my director's report that's at the end. As I had already mentioned, there's a Human Services Operations Manager that's been hired, and Kristen will start 10/1, and she is just really great to work with. I really look forward to having her, you know, as a partner going forward with redesign work and really defining how our zones look. And I think she's going to be a wealth of knowledge and just has a great attitude and a positive outlook and is a go-getter. So really good addition to that team. I just wanted to share too, you know, as a zone director, and part of it is important for me to just learn what's happening too. I've started to participate in some groups, and so right now I'm serving in the Zone Director Performance Appraisals group, and that's short term. That will probably end within the next month or so. We'll have that process hammered out. We're almost finished with a juvenile justice bill review. And then I'm going to work with a group of zone directors on our Zone Director Association transition. So because we changed from county directors to zone directors, there's some stuff with NDACO that's going to have to be changed to make sure that we can remain in their association. And then the newest project that's coming up is that I'll be working with the team on the theory of constraints and other continuous quality improvement initiatives. So we would like to have zone director representation on processes that impact all of the zones so we can contribute to that work and so we can keep the fellow zone directors up to speed regarding the process that has been made and be liaisons from the zone directors to those work groups. And then in terms of, you know, the previous administrator obviously was very, very well connected to the community and served on a number of boards and things. And so there are some that I've assumed taking over. So I'm going to serve on the steering committee for Stand to Protect. And Stand to Protect is an agency that is providing adult education on the prevention of child sexual abuse. So I felt like that was really pertinent to the work that we're doing here. I am going to be voted in, I believe, as a board member for the Red River Children's Advocacy Center, which is important. We have a really strong connection with them. They do a lot of our forensic interviewing for child abuse cases when they're criminal or sexual in nature. So I feel like that's really important for me to be there. And then I am currently a member at large on the Board of Health, and I've been participating in some New American COVID education and quarantine support team meetings that happen on Wednesday mornings. So I've been branching out into the community. I really see my role as, you know, hopefully in the future as some of our organizational projects get underway and die down, that I can be a liaison between our agency and the community and help build those connections with agencies so we can really partner to build a network within our community that addresses, you know, family and children and just citizen issues from a really preventative prospect instead of actually even having people to, you know, come into our agency in the first place. So I think that's a futuristic vision, but I'm trying to make meaningful connections in the community now. Not included on the plan is I finally got on Friday morning my human service zone plan back, and I got a page and a half of feedback from Sarah Stoll and from State Legal. And so I'm going to review that feedback and review it in conjunction with my plan. And then my next steps are really to identify individuals that might need to be in a follow-up meeting with the state to ask the appropriate questions that we need to finalize this human service zone plan. So I think there'll need to be at least an auditor there, and not county commissioners, I apologize. Human service zone board members can be there. We'll just need to make sure that if we have a certain number of zone board members that we follow all of our open meeting requirements related to that meeting. So, but I haven't even skimmed the surface of that. I do have until December to finalize that. And for my preliminary review, it's really about getting in some financial related documents that the auditor's office will have, sending in new org charts around our structure, and then providing some detail that I just didn't have, you know, when I was doing this 3 months in that I have now, being able to expand a little bit on some of my sections where I made comments. So overall, the feedback seemed really reasonable. And the final thing I had is the state has been working on a personnel policies, and so they're trying to help develop personnel policies that can be utilized across the zones, because there is a goal for standardization. And so what they want to do is they want to allow individual zones to write addendums that account for some things in those. And so I'll be getting a list of those addendums that can be written and work on those. And then that's what I'm going to present at our next meeting for review, is those addendums, because then I'd like for the zone board to see those and to have a feel for them and to provide any feedback about those, since they regard staff, and then I can submit them back to the state in November when they're due. Okay, I see Mr. Peterson, you have a hand raised?
Yeah, hi. Quick question. You obviously have access to your peers far more than I do. Are there any zone directors or any zones, maybe a better question, that are struggling with this new structure, or is everybody sort of chugging along and doing the best they can given the circumstances that they have we've all been dealt? Is everyone doing okay? That's my main question.
Yeah, I think, you know, really the last meeting last Wednesday was one of the first times I just heard people say, whew, you know, this is a lot. Not only did we have, you know, did we have this large job as social service directors for our counties, you know, but now we're doing redesign work and we're doing a lot more collaborative things, and, you know, stuff's just coming down the pipeline left and right, and we have lots of questions. And so, but yeah, I think everybody is doing well, and really it's really reassuring, I think, to have the zone directors. We meet once a week as a group, and then once every 2 weeks with Sarah Stolt from the state. And so we spend a lot of time together and have work groups and things in between. And that group is really supportive, and I think it's really coming together well as a team, and leveraging the individual strengths of the team to really move forward, you know, and to conquer redesign work and, just the changes in the system that everybody's being presented with. So, yeah, I think things are good.
Okay. And that was my
other
follow-up,
people
was the state being
might tell
supportive.
me I'm crazy, but
So I'm hearing you say the state is being supportive as well.
yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, someone else had raised their hand and my thing popped off before I could catch who that was. So was there someone who had another question? Oh, was that you, Mr. Wilson? See a little hand beside your name there.
No, that was earlier, for the, instance that you described.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I don't have anything else at this juncture to report out on, so I'll do a final call for any questions as we near the end of our scheduled meeting time here. All right, hearing no questions, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second. By Pollock.
Thank you. So meeting adjourned, 2:56 p.m. Thank you for attending, everyone. It was really good to see you all and get to talk to you. I hope you had a nice long weekend.
Thank you, Pearl.
All right.